medical systems and drug delivery systems. And as we are all working to help entrepreneurs and startups like you that are here today, it made sense for us to meet under the topic of how does health tech fit in healthcare today and tomorrow. Now, this is one of the challenges that you, our members, face on a daily basis, namely, how do you foster and apply technology to real-world challenges? And how do you foster the right technology today for tomorrow's challenges? Besides going on the internet and finding a lot of valuable information about both Bioinnovation Institute and MedTech Bridge, I can say that for the MedTech Bridge part, we are funded by the Danish Industry Foundation, Industriens Fond. We are supported as a 3-year project trying to close the gap between Danish MedTech and the American market. Now, this is in realization of the US market being the single biggest market in the world for medical device technology, but also one of the markets that Danish companies knows very little about. So this project was started as an initiative to do hands-on activities to connect Danish medtech startups with the US market. This to also gain knowledge about the US market and how to approach that. So what we do for our members is anything that has relevance for US market entry. That be regulatory, market fit assessment, market potential assessment, reimbursement or value-based healthcare investigations, and well, anything in between the regulatory, so the hardcore part of it, and the market access part of it. And a part of that is connecting the right people in the US with our members. We see the US market being so large and complex that it is difficult for a startup, or actually also for consolidated medtech companies, to get a clear overview of the entire market. And that's what we do, connecting our members with the right people that know the market. And that is, of course, free for everybody as long as the Danish Industry Foundation is funding us. That's a little bit about the MedTech Bridge. You can go online and get a lot more information when it makes sense for you. I'm excited to introduce today's panel, where we have Henning, who's the head of innovation at Rigshospitalet, Andreas, who's the CEO of a health tech AI company called Corti. And then we have Corey, who's the VP of Technology Scouting and Development. And just 5 minutes ago, Corey told me that now he has a different title. So I think he will get us up to date on that. And moderating today's panel is a good friend of the house, Tony from BII. So I'll leave the word to Tony.
Thank you, Tim. So if I may also squeezing a brief introduction about BII before we dive deep into the online panel today. I just want to briefly share my screen quickly to share a little bit about BII and our work. Let me put this into the full screen mode. So the inspiration behind the Bioinnovation Institute is that Denmark has a long tradition of being a country that's filled with world-class life science research. And there's a lot of innovation activity that's taking place in Denmark. And while the Danish entrepreneurship ecosystem is thriving with numerous initiatives, that still leaves a lot of, I guess, desire for a supporting mechanism like the Bioinnovation Institute, because the transition of research insights to business remains difficult despite a developed ecosystem. And the gap that the Bioinnovation Institute has identified is that teams often lack the competencies, the network, the funding, as well as physical facilities to take a newly formed innovative idea into creating a venture to develop a product and really take off with a venture. And as a result, many of the newly founded companies often surrender to the so-called valley of death. So with this inspiration in mind, the Bioinnovation Institute was created as an initiative under the Novo Nordisk Foundation to plug this gap in the market exactly. So at its core, the Bioinnovation Institute wants to be this bridge between academic or deep scientific inspired companies or ideas to become a fully fledged business, and BI wants to be the bridge that enables that journey. So of course, the BII is also identified Copenhagen or Denmark as the epicenter of the Bio-Danish bio-cluster, which has really helped with our positioning in terms of building up a good foundation for launching the Bioinnovation Institute in 2018. So what is BII? As mentioned, Bioinnovation Institute is a part of the Novo Nordisk Foundation as an initiative under the foundation. Hence, we are a non-profit early life science incubator. And our mission is to really catalyze the commercialization of innovative ideas by providing a set of offerings that we have identified are essential for the creation of new ventures. So in a short word, we are an incubator for early life science companies. And what we offer is, as mentioned, this knowledge, network, funding, and infrastructure that really enables new ideas to take off as newly formed companies. So in terms of knowledge, so all companies that comes under incubation at the Bioinnovation Institute is assigned a dedicated anchor who are experienced in business development in their respective fields, and they offer not only guidance and also mentorship towards new company building. Network-wise, the Bioinnovation Institute, of course, is also formed a great network of partners. These can range from dedicated professional service providers to venture capital investor networks. And this is where we bring in other actors in the ecosystem to help our portfolio companies really accelerate on the development of their ideas. Funding-wise, the Bioinnovation Institute runs 3 separate different programs. Going forward, we'll have the faculty program, which is actually an academic research grant that's awarded on invitation to world-renowned academic researchers with entrepreneurship records. So this is a grant program that comes up with funding of up to 2.5 million euros. On the incubation front, we have 2 incubation programs going forward. One called Venture Lab. This is very much a shorter program that's dedicated to teams that has not yet put in place a fully fledged business plan. So this is very much catered to very early stage teams that have an initial proof of concept data on an innovation. And this program comes with a strong educational component. So it's all about helping the teams to not only conduct further killer experiments to validate their technology proposition, but also to help them put in place a fully fledged business plan so they can go on to raise their next stage of financing. The Creation House program is our flagship incubation program, which offers with funding in the form of a convertible loan notes up to an amount of 1.3 million euros. And this program is all about helping teams with already a business plan in place to start to execute on the business plan, as well as closing any gaps in the company building so that they are in a position to raise Series A financing once they have graduated from our Creation House program. So here is a chart that depicts how our program sort of supports companies of different stages. Even though we support very early stage companies that have not yet raised any professional investments, we do distinguish between, within this realm, there's still a different set of needs. Hence, we have provided the Venture Lab and the Creations House has separate offerings. And of course, we also have a residence program because of our physical infrastructure here at the BRI. We also want to make it accessible to other early stage companies that have raised financing, but still requires a physical space to work in. And this is how we also see that we can enrich the community here at the Bioinnovation Institute through this program. And lastly, of course, we also provide a physical life science R&D infrastructure here at our premise in Copenhagen, where currently we have a fully kitted out lab facility that's much dedicated to lab life science research. And going forward, we're also making adjustments as we see our portfolio develops. So the Bioinnovation Institute have interest in three major areas, namely therapeutics, bioindustrials, and health tech. And over the last 2 years, we have developed quite a substantial track record in the therapeutics field, as we have gone through the setup phase of the BRI since its inception in 2018. And going forward, we are actively also building out our pipeline of applications so that we are looking to build out equally impressive portfolio of bioindustrials companies as well as health tech companies. And to date, the Bioinnovation Institute have already supported more than 78 teams through our incubation programs, and we have distributed more than 45 million euros worth of funding, and our portfolio companies have managed to attract more than 27 million euros of funding that's been raised from third party. We have one company that's publicly announced a successful raise of a Series A company, which was a therapeutics company that was announced last year. And we have two in the pipeline that's not yet disclosed. And of course, we have also built up quite a substantial following on social media, just to make sure that we get our brand out there in the ecosystem as establishing ourselves as a prominent life science incubator. So we also have great support from the Novo Nordisk Foundation that has allowed us to chart this ambitious path to scale and growth. We target by 2025 that we would have taken more than 200 companies under our incubation programs. And also by 2025, we're targeting to help at least 15 of the teams that go through our incubation program to raise a successful Series A financing. So in terms of our program logistics, we are running both programs, the incubation programs, that's Venture Lab and Creation House, in parallel. And the next call for application for both programs will open in January 2021 and will close at the end of February 2021. So we will run both programs in parallel, and they will run twice a year. And our ambition is to bring in at least 20 companies into BRI for incubation for the year of 2021. For the best way to keep track of our activities and also our call for applications is to sign up to the Bioinnovation Institute's newsletter, which can be easily completed by going to visit our website. It's really the best way to keep in touch with the Bioinnovation Institute. And of course, we also love to continue to engage with the ecosystem, as we see that we have a pretty unique position being a non-profit life science incubator, that we can play a substantial role in terms of really being an active contributor towards supporting new companies that have just launched. So at this point, I'm gonna stop sharing, and at this point, I guess we have some time still to open up for questions. I think that in Q&A we do have one question. Okay. Well, maybe we can leave this question for. Okay. Yes. So there's a question which I would like to pick up right now. This is a question, maybe I'll read it out loud. There seems to be a forum for getting funding. We don't need investors, funding or finance, but rather access to the US markets for our products, which is melt-blown, non-woven filter textile. We're talking pure sales. Is BRI the right forum? As BRI is a early stage company incubator, market access is not something that we exclusively focus on, but then of course this is an area where MedTech Bridge have a lot of activities, and hence I will bring in Tim to maybe to help address this one.
Yeah, you can say we provide, or we do what we can to provide the access to the US markets, and we have investors in the US market. I think we can. I'm not sure what kind of product we are talking about here, but if there's melt-blown non-woven, yeah. I think we at MedTech Bridge could actually help here in accessing the US market, or at least getting some knowledge on where to go first. Yeah, I would say. Actually, there's a question for you, Tony.
Yes, I see that. Okay, so maybe I'll read out the question again. Can you share a bit about your company selection criteria? So the eligibility criteria to BRI's incubation programs are pretty straightforward. That is, we can only support, because of our nonprofit mandate, we can only support companies that have not yet raised any professional investments. And our funding mechanism takes such that we can only wire funding into a Danish legal entity. So there needs to be a Danish legal entity created, and in order for us to provide the funding support. And lastly, this is from a practicality perspective, we also of course require a presence of our companies that is under our incubation, to be present in Copenhagen and at the BRI. This is because this is how we identified that in order for the companies that are under our incubation to receive the maximum benefit from what we can offer here at BRI, physical presence is important, given that we have a physical facility that's available, and also there's a community that we have built all our companies under incubation here together. I think there's a follow-up question. So is business angel capital professional? It's the determination is that any third-party investments that is from a source that is not actively involved in the company is seen as professional investment. So it also depends on the degree of involvement of such a business angel in the company. That could also potentially sort of determine whether this investment will be regarded as professional or not.
And actually building a little bit on your company selection criteria, Tony, due to the funding, it's the same for us at MedTech Bridge. Due to the way we are funded, it's Danish companies that we can help. We are looking how we can help others, Nordic companies, but as of today, it has to be a Danish entity of some sort. Yeah, that's what we can do.
And maybe I can also expand a little bit more in terms of the type of interest that we have at BI, given that health tech is a relatively broad area. We're currently focused on building a portfolio of innovations that looks to take advantage of the advancement in digital technologies and, you know, the advancement of digital or other technology trends in general, actually. So we're looking for sort of interdisciplinary approach towards solving healthcare problems. And of course, we also have a white space that's open for transformative medical devices that looks into not only make the process of healthcare to transform has the potential to transform the process. As we are in a unique position as a non-profit or life science incubator that does not necessarily carry any strict, I guess, agenda. We're really innovation that are bold enough to tackle the healthcare problem at the widest, the broadest sense. And of course, given our history also with, I guess, our focus on therapeutics, or our history has been built in the therapeutics field, we also have a great interest in solutions that can have an impact, with direct impact on patient outcome. And these often are solutions that require to go through rigorous clinical validation to claim specific clinical labels. Yeah.
And in the meantime, I have seen in the chat box that Rafael has provided a comment on the request for accessing the US market for the non-woven filtered textile. I mean, Rafael is an excellent source for wound care related questions, so that if it happens to be in the application area of wound care, so please get in contact with him from the diligencewoundcareglobal.com. He can also help you on that.
Great, thanks, Corey. Thanks for picking it up. We are just waiting for our two other panelists to join, and then we will launch the debate right away as soon as they've joined.
While we are waiting for the other panelists, I have another question for you, Tony. That
yes,
how well connected Bioinnovation Institute outside of Denmark? I mean, there are other parts of Europe, different type of accelerators, incubators, likewise.
Yeah, so maybe it's worthwhile to mention that we have recently announced a partnership or partnerships with 8 international renowned VCs. And these are venture capital investors globally renowned that are part of our program advisory group members. So they offer us extensive network, not only from a financing perspective. Of course, they also have, these are also global investors, including the likes of Sofinnova Ventures, Rock Health in the US, and also Biogenerations Ventures. And so through these program advisors, and of course through the Novel Holdings investor group, we have access to not only investors and also networks across the globe. I would say even in the North America market and pan-European market. Yeah.
Actually, Tony, there's a question or two for you on the Q&A.
I think the best way to learn about our convertible loans is actually we do publish our terms before when we open up our applications. So please feel free to stay tuned. When we open up our applications, we also publish guidelines, and also we publish our terms upfront so that interested companies knows upfront what they apply into when they apply to our program. So the next call will open in January 2021, and we aim to have the materials online before that. So please sign up to our go to our website, sign up to our newsletter, and stay tuned for our more information about our programs. And I would like to also address this this question from Niels about BRI being exclusively interested in pharma projects. As I mentioned, that is indeed not correct. We have interests across 3 fields: for therapeutics, bioindustrials, and therapeutics. And I think Philippe's question, if you can reach out to me offline, happy to re-engage. If that's okay, would love to take that question offline. And Gregor, similarly, my email address is available from our website, so feel free to get in touch so we can discuss further and take the conversation offline to see if there's opportunity to collaborate. Okay.
While we're waiting for the other 2 panelists, maybe we can ask Corey to tell us a little bit about the story, why it sounds like your role is a different one because you realized something had to be done differently, and that's very much related to what we are talking about here today.
Yeah, that's true. I will be happy to give a bit of background information on this one. I mean, for those who are not known and who don't know me, so I have recently joined Coloplast in July. So it's just a bit longer than 4 months now. And when I joined, my title was Technology Scouting and Development. So I mean, as you can clearly understand that with a good ambition to move into open innovation practices. But soon we have also realized, I mean, within the organization that actually we need to do a bit more than this. It is not necessarily scouting a technology and then trying to implement it somewhere that we can use. It is all about, let's say, how can we turn it into a viable business proposition that we can scale in different markets and different applications. And that's also one of the reasons why that we have gone through a reorganization in our innovation structure in Coloplast. And now I am happy to announce that I have taken the role of new business innovation. So that emphasizes different dimensions on new business creation versus the innovation elements as well.
Thank you very much, Corey. Just in case you're wondering, we're trying to get the other panelists into this meeting here.
We have been talking with Tim before the whole event has started. So that my first comment to Tim is that actually I don't trust technology. So all this technology hiccups do happen all the time. I'm pretty sure that once everyone has already experiencing quite heavily working from home type of things, there's not working Zoom links or not hearing the other parts, or the cameras are not working, are part of daily lives now. So it's something that we get used to.
I doubt that.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Andreas.
Andreas. It is very good to have you here. We have some technical difficulties getting everybody on board here. Andreas, are you with us?
Yes, and I can hear you, and it seems to be working.
Excellent, excellent.
Great.
Good news.
Yes. So we're just waiting on Henning, and we can get started with the discussion.
Sounds good.
Maybe in the interest of time, I would like to ask both maybe Andreas and Corey just to give a brief introduction about yourself while Henny make his way to join this panel. Corey, if it's okay, we'll start with you.
Well, my name is Koray. I have recently moved to Denmark from Netherlands, where I have been living about, let's say, last 2 decades. I have been working in Philips before I joined Coloplast as of July this year. Well, it's also something that I don't recommend to anyone. Do not try to relocate to another country in the midst of a pandemic. So it's not that fun. But so far everything goes fine. I have landed softly and so start putting my feet on the ground on the work as well. I'm responsible for open innovation practices in Coloplast. And this is also something that we are trying to build almost from scratch now. So that try to convert things from, let's say, product/box sales to delivering complete care packages, including different type of services and solutions.
Great, thanks. Andreas?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Andreas Cleve, and I am one of the co-founders of Cordy.ai, which is a health tech company working to support medical professionals when they interact and diagnose patients. So we've built a service, a bit like you will know from Siri and Alexa, so a voice-based assistant that can listen in when a medical professional is conversing with a patient, and there it will analyze what is said and shared and help come up with the right questions to ask, the right diagnosis, and the right risk profile.
Great, thanks. Henning?
Yeah, so sorry for my video not working right now. I will make it work later on, hopefully. But I'm very pleased to be invited for this panel discussion. It's a very important topic, and I'm currently the the Chief Innovation Officer at Rigshospitalet. I used to be a professor and director of Copenhagen Health Tech Cluster, sort of bridging the ecosystem between the public healthcare sector and private companies. But now I'm part of the public healthcare sector, and we would very much like to invite both startups and companies to participate in developing the future healthcare systems within Rigshospitalet. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you to all three panelists for taking the time today. I wanted to jump right into the discussion point today and sort of pose this first question to the three panelists. So given that health tech has really attracted a lot of attention given what's happened this year, right? I think it would be very interesting to know, from your organization or your personal perspective, your definition of what health tech is, because it's quite a broad sort of a discussion that's been, or definition that's been used in a lot of places, which means different things to different people. And also it would be very interesting to hear your perspective about how your organization has thought about introducing innovative health tech solutions into existing healthcare systems. If I may ask Henning to take the sort of a first lead on this one. Hello, Henning, you still there? Okay, maybe we can go to Andreas. Maybe you can share your perspective.
Sorry, the audio dropped a bit. Well, your question was?
Your definition of health tech and how your organization have gone about trying to introduce an innovative health tech solution in the healthcare system.
Sure. So unlike Henning, I am not a healthcare expert. I come from technology, lived in San Francisco, and I've just been building technology companies to support healthcare professionals for the best part of a decade now. And how we look at this, of course, that healthcare at its broadest definition is one of the most important sectors in the world. It's where we place our trust when we're sick. And it's a sector really driven by incredibly passionate and incredibly intelligent people who are just dealing with the highest level of uncertainty making decisions in any part of the spectrum. So of course, many parts of other industries are also highly driven with uncertainty, but there are so many parts of the body we don't know. And doctors always have to live under and make decisions under incomplete information. And that's why we feel that technology is needed, because technology can hopefully provide some tools that will provide better time management, better time access, so we can have our brilliant doctors spend more time with us when we're patients. And we can give them tools that will provide better or more complete information when they're making decisions. And that is exactly how we try to attack it from Cordy's perspective.
So it's very much an approach of understanding where is at least the pain, and then you try to solve the issue with technology. Great, thanks. And Corey, if I can move on to you and get your perspective on your definition of health tech, and in your experience, how has Philips or Coropass think about innovation?
I mean, health tech is an essential part of healthcare. I mean, so in order to understand the health tech's position, that we need to start thinking from the healthcare perspective in general, so that the care cycle, the care pathways, the patient journeys, and also the clinical workflows are essential part of this healthcare package in principle. So if you start from this holistic perspective, whatever that you put in this ecosystem that is going to facilitate different type of transactions, better data, or any other type of transactions, or improve the workflows, or provide better care to patients, are a part of the health tech definition, in my opinion. So that in that respect, it is extremely broad. Things as simple as smart scheduling systems, or can be really advanced, like different type of artificial intelligence applications, for example, in image processing in diagnostics imaging, or like Andreas has been working on the audio-based analytics, are all falling under the category of healthcare or health tech, in my definition. And in that respect, I mean, how we have been approaching, or how the industry giants are approaching to health tech, is also starting with understanding that how those workflows actually do exist, and then where the friction points are. And in other words, how can we make this healthcare in general more efficient and more effective, that can provide better patient outcomes, that can provide better patient satisfaction? I'm not necessarily only I'm talking about the clinical performance, but I'm also talking about the acceptance in patients' life, let's say. And at the same time, how can we provide a better staff experience so that they are not overburdened, they are not getting burnouts, or they are not really seeing this as an additional step in their workflow, and at the same time maintaining a lower cost of care. It's a multi-headed monster that has these 4 major value drivers. And if we start thinking from the technologies from this perspective, putting patient at the center, and then the workflows around that for providing and delivering care is the starting point for any type of health tech innovations, let's say. Because otherwise nothing is going to be implemented in the workflow.
Great, thanks. And Henning, maybe we also get your perspective about how, from your perspective, how is health tech defined, and also from your organization's perspective, how has sort of the approach looked like in terms of approaching innovation, introducing innovation?
I think I'd like to take one step backwards and look at the ecosystem of the current healthcare system we have in Denmark. We have private practitioners, we have the hospital system, and then we have the municipalities. And for a lot of the diseases we're seeing right now, patients sort of travel between these 3 entities to be cured, or at least live with their disease. They all sort of also have a track of data across these 3 entities, or this ecosystem. And if we use that data, we can actually both track but also help the patients wherever they are in the system. And I think that's the new thing of the future health tech that we're seeing. So we will be seeing better use of data locally, and we also will be seeing the use of data to track patients and help patients wherever they are 24/7, living a life as close to normal as possible. And then the other thing I'd like to say is, and that alludes to what the other 2 panelists' comments, we will see a more and more challenged healthcare system with more tasks to be handled and more complicated diagnostics to be taken. And I think the use of technology will, in a lot of these aspects, actually be the key to overcome the burden that we are seeing. So I see health tech as the only right solutions to a lot of the problems we're seeing in healthcare right now.
And Henning, maybe as a follow-up question, what has been sort of the effort or the attempts from the healthcare system side that you could see that, in terms of trying to introduce sort of innovation or innovative health tech solutions in the system?
We have a very, in a way, the healthcare is a very conservative sector with a lot of traditions and a lot of sort of call for evidence whenever there's a new procedure taken in. And that is very good because we are dealing with people's health. But on the other hand, it also slows down the acceptance of new technologies. So despite that, we see new technologies which definitely can help clinicians and patients, we also see a very slow-moving system where, with the introduction of new technologies, are taking place very slowly. And as the role I have at Rigshospitalet, and I think that's why I was hired in, and we're forming a team of innovation, is actually to both accelerate the acceptance of new technologies, but also to change the mindset and the culture at the hospital to a faster adaptation of new technologies.
Great, thanks. And Andreas, so given Corty's effort in trying to introducing a new innovation in the healthcare system, have you come across, I don't know, any barriers in terms of the attitude towards technology? And is that attitude, do you think that it's changing given what's happened this year?
I only represent a subset of health tech suppliers, of course. And I think what I can talk a bit about, or at least have a little bit of insight into, is of course delivering exponential technology to healthcare providers, in our case, artificial intelligence. And I know for a fact that not a lot of us who deliver this kind of technology are lucky enough to have ambassadors on the buyer side as versed and knowledgeable as Henning, which we would love to have in any given case on the other side in any buyer situation. But of course, that's not the case. We have been incredibly lucky at Cordy to work, especially here in Denmark, with a unique set of buyers at the emergency services, and especially their director, Dr. Freddy Liebert, who is by far one of the most innovative people I've met in healthcare. But sadly, I think that's an outlier. So when I hear from other vendors trying to deliver, what they're often meeting is, of course, a bit of stale, let's say, dismay when it comes to this kind of technology, since we have seen a first wave led by a very big blue company from America, who promised big things back in the zeros and early decade around artificial intelligence and its ability to change healthcare. And I think many have now tried and bought it, and I don't think a lot have seen the efficacy of the technology yet. So I think there is still a need to prove the validity of a lot of these kinds of technologies, which has influenced attitudes on many buyer side. And this is why I think it's so important that Research Patel and others are brave enough to build departments around guys like Henning, because we need people there who are incredibly smart and good ambassadors and able to see the big picture, to pick the right bets, so we can get some proof points that these kinds of technologies will play a big part in the next generation of healthcare.
Great, thanks. And Corey, in your experience, have you had the chance to observe sort of firsthand or secondhand the attitude of healthcare systems towards health tech innovations?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell a few words about that, especially when it comes to implementing things in the hospital. Things are extremely challenging. I mean, I don't know how many of you have an idea about that one, but hospital IT is an extremely complex environment. And I think an average hospital is working more than 150, almost 200 IT different type of software platforms. So if your technology comes in as yet another IT platform or yet another software, then actually you are creating a bit of burden on the workflow. You are not making life easier for the healthcare professionals. You are adding a bit of complexity. So they are not by definition against the technological advances that you are bringing in, because they immediately recognize the value, but we have to find ways to make it seamlessly integrated into their workflow. I mean, not necessarily creating another software that they have to double click and open up and then try to integrate on the outcomes on the EMR or whatever they are working on. I mean, it is the biggest hurdle, in my opinion. It is not necessarily the mindset, but it is the IT system complexity in the hospital is making life a bit really difficult for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think that you've really highlighted that, so sort of really getting to know the system and understanding the complexity of the system.
That's true. And at the same time, the interoperability is one of the keywords that everyone is chasing for. And yes, we do have standards like HR7, the FHIR and everything, but they are not 100% compatible with, I mean, not everything is 100% compatible with each other. I mean, you wanna develop something that is going to get integrated on an EMR system, for example. I mean, the output of your AI platform, for example, is going to generate a data point on the EMR, but the APIs for EMR are maybe changing every month. So how are you going to keep up the pace with that? So these type of practical obstacles are things that we need to go over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. And I guess with every bit of challenge, they on the flip side is potentially an opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
So I'd like to also then pose this question to the panelists about given what has happened in 2020, now we're seeing record-breaking amount of investment into health tech, particularly into digital health. Going forward, where do you think is, the opportunity, or how could the world look like for health tech going forward? Is it going to be more? Can we expect more favorable, policy environments from regulators coming online, etc.? Love to hear your view. Maybe we can start with Henning.
Yes, but I see a lot of opportunities right in front of us. I think that Conan also touched upon that, the changes in workflow. So if we are to have things implemented in clinical practice, they need to be smart. So we need smart systems that allows us to do things faster or in a better way than we're currently doing. And if we think of the way we used to be looking at maps to find our way around the city, to what we are now using with the Google Maps, and the speed by which they are updating, changes in queuing or things like that. The same things need to be built into the systems that we're using within the hospital. So that means it's real-time real-time analysis of data. It's decision support whenever there's decisions made. We need systems to be overlooking patients and looking for the first signs of critical events, so like micro events, and allowing us to take action at a much faster speed than we are doing currently. So I think, within the next 5 years, we'll see smart solutions like the one Andreas is representing on, heart problems taking place within the environment. We will also see systems allowing doctors to be monitoring patients either at home or at the hospital. We see them supporting doctors in taking the right decisions and also increasing the speed by which they can take decisions. So I see them coming up. So this is one of the areas with the artificial intelligence where we can use data to change the way we're working. And then, of course, there will also be systems which are not as depending on data, but will be smarter, delivering medicine to patients, making sure that the medicine is tailored to the single person and things like that. But there will also be a lot of tech related to that. But definitely at the hospital, I'll see the introduction of artificial intelligence, decision support systems within the next 2, 3, 4 years at a massive speed.
Great, thanks. And Andreas, maybe we get your view.
I agree a lot, and I think at least the most important point again for us from the vendor perspective is to acknowledge the importance of keeping on documenting the efficacy and level of quality that we provide. Given back to Corey's point from before, there are so many technology platforms already. And why would you buy one more when the real goal here is to have doctors and nurses spend more time with patients, not more time in software? So I think we have a huge burden there, and I think that's maybe even a bigger burden here than in many other lines of business. And to actually go capture some of these values and actually augment all these brilliant doctors and physicians, there's a lot of pressure on making these real world gains very, very tangible.
Mm-hmm. Corey?
Could I add one comment to that, which I think is important? Yeah, one comment to what Andreas just said. I think that one of the obstacles in introducing new technologies is that we have a strong belief that humans don't make mistakes. So when we're introducing new technologies, we require that they don't have any failure or any errors made. But the system we're substituting is the human brain, the human decision making, and there's a lot of decisions made wrong every day at the hospital. So just as we don't accept self-driving cars at the moment because we think that there might be a small risk of them making an error, despite that we see human errors all the time, we have the same problem in healthcare right now. Sorry for interrupting, but that was just, I think it fitted into what Andreas just said.
Correct.
I have a slightly different view on that one. I mean, I really don't think that AI is not going to replace the doctors, by the way. So that, but the doctors who are using AI are going to replace the doctors who are not using it. So I mean, in that respect, there is a term that we have been using in Philips that instead of artificial intelligence, we were phrasing it as adaptive intelligence. So that it digests all the data that comes from the patient side, let's say, and provides the right type of information, converts the data to right type of information for the healthcare professional, and adapt his or her workflow. So that not creating an extra burden, not creating an extra technology that they need to learn and everything. So that in that respect, what we would like to see from the high-tech area of artificial intelligence on how to become more adaptive, how to be more inclusive for the healthcare professions. So that, I mean, in that respect, I don't see it is a sustainable goal to replace the physicians by technologies, but augment them and then provide them access to more information from the giant amount of data. And to give a number on this type of things, I mean, by 2035, there will be a global deficit of 12.9 million skilled healthcare professionals in the world. This is the estimation from the World Health Organization. So that we need to empower the existing skilled healthcare professionals with the right type of tools so that they can close this gap.
Great, thanks. Tim, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, one of our participants had a question that relates to how is health tech innovation integrating the imperative need for cybersecurity, and that relates a little bit to what you're saying, Henning, that you have a lot of new things coming, which is all going to be probably for the good of us. But what is the real barrier to getting this? Is it a culture thing? Is it a resource constraint? Or is it actually concerns around cybersecurity? In Europe, we have this GDPR, and some of the worst cases of violation of that is actually coming from the public entities, not necessarily healthcare, but Danish tax authorities and all that. Is one of the barriers, is that cybersecurity concerns, or is that just something that we kind of take for granted?
I think security is one concern that we, of course, need to take into account. We often think of the GDPR as a constraint, but I think that we have to think of first of all, of the GDPR as something which was there to help the patients actually take control over their data. So that's important to say. So I think GDPR is a good thing. Second thing, it might be making something a bit more difficult as we have to ask the patients whether we are allowed to do certain things. But I think, at least in Denmark, the constraint is not from the GDPR, but from the other legislation called Sundhedsloven, which is sort of interrupting with the GDPR. So that's one thing. So I see a lot of new technologies actually evolving, and I just want, if I was cited for saying that I think that technology should replace doctors, that was not what I meant. I meant doctors should be supported in their decision making, taking advantage of what happened with the last patient who looked like this. How did it actually go? How should we correct or how should we tailor the treatment of this patients to fit all the other data that this patient is represented with? So I definitely see a support system. I'd like to add and agree that we will see young doctors being skilled much faster by the support of technology. And then we see a lot of smart situations where technology will make sure that that doctors don't do wrong things by overlooking them while they're doing it. And I think that would also be sort of a security for patients in the future. So the main barrier is to generate areas where technologists and clinicians can work together to actually make systems that will work in real life.
Yeah, and Andreas, maybe I can ask you then: what is cybersecurity and patient safety? Is that something that a natural part of developing what you do, or how do you approach this?
I think it's an important question. I don't think it's the right question to ask when it comes to data, because data security has been an issue forever, and it continues to be, especially as we get more cases. But I think what the question is also aiming at: how do we get interoperability of all these data sets across these systems and across vendors? And that's the real hassle. And yes, data security from sort of a cybersecurity perspective is one part. I think the real issue on interoperability of data from patients' perspective is that we start to have a language and an expectation post some of the critical instances we have, especially related to American elections, about what it's the ethical processing and meaningful, transparent processing of data from a vendor perspective of other people's data. They are playing like, if data was a resource, it's a resource that vendors historically have had free access to do whatever they wanted to do with, and they don't anymore. And to that respect, I disagree with Henning. I think GDPR is very stifling, because we very easily end up looking at this from a very Danish, European provider-based perspective. We operate in the US as well. I can also see some of the questions is about how do we do that as a European software or healthcare vendors as well. But when we operate in the US, it's very different than operating in Europe right now. And when I compare to healthcare vendors operating in Asia, it's even more different. That creates different competitive advantages. And some of them will smile towards companies from different parts of the world. And right now, GDPR is making certain business models about operating on data quite hard. I do agree. I think GDPR is important. I think it's the right thing to do, because I am a patient too, and it's my data too being operated on. But I just want to be transparent, as well as GDPR wants to be transparent. That GDPR makes that hard. So I think cybersecurity is just one part of it. We're just in a very big paradigm change on what it means to operate on data from many aspects.
Great, thanks.
Can I comment just shortly on this, because Andreas sort of mentioned something about GDPR. First of all, I think that I'd like to mention Andreas and Corti together with Freddie Lippert as one example of, you know, a very bright person with technical skills meeting up a person from within the hospital system that is, you know, looking for new solutions and also being brave enough to fight for them. So I think that combination is what we are looking for in other aspects. So more of that. When it comes to GDPR, I agree that it's a disadvantage for companies that developing solutions in Europe compared to other areas. But I definitely think that down the line, that patients will be asking for solutions that sort of accept the privacy issues that is also part of the GDPR. So, but we can discuss that at another time point. When it comes to patients, a lot of patients actually is asking their data to be used much more than they are today. So the whole issue on ethical use of patient data is often not driven by patients, but other people expecting patients not to be willing to share their data. So at least from the analysis we've done, more than 85% of all patients actually accept and expect their data to be used to help the next patient. So I think things like that needs to also be exposed and discussed in open space to sort of balance the whole issue on data ethics.
Great, thanks, Henning. And Corey, from your perspective, going forward, what could be the considerations or maybe challenges that you see for health tech companies to tackle?
Looking at the data and how to use the data and how to navigate through the complexity of data privacy rules and regulations is indeed an important topic, because I mean, like Andreas has mentioned, there are fundamental differences between different continents, different countries on how to handle the data. I mean, in Europe, we are bound with GDPR because we say that the patient owns the data or the user owns the data. In US, there is a bit of gray zone going on, so that healthcare systems claiming that they own the data, or at least they use it freely. In China, government uses the data, so that I mean they own the data, and then they assign some companies to play with the data, and that's why they can move really fast as well. It creates a very interesting landscape. But in my opinion, I think from a philosophical point of view, putting patient as the owner of the data is not necessarily a bad thing, but we have to come up with a bit more creative solutions. I mean, I do anticipate and expect and really would like to see, for example, like the crowdfunding platforms, different type of crowdsourcing platforms where we can ask people to donate their data for a specific purpose, with a clear consent, with clear goals and what to be done with this data as well. And I see, for example, in the chat box that there are some technologies that can be used for facilitating these type of things, like using blockchain technologies for managing dynamic consent. So that, I mean, you generate, I mean, you own your data as patient, but I mean, you can also change your consent for different type of purposes as you move forward, because then it's going to be back traceable to you. So, I mean, these type of things, I really do anticipate that we will see in near future. For example, a research group in a university or a young technology company with all the bright minds, with a nice, good ecosystem around this application, can start a campaign about data donations. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For developing different type of tools and algorithms. So then it can be already implementable.
Yeah, and this one's really sort of taking a stab at the future. So in terms of such an infrastructure, who do you think is in the best position to be driving the development of such an infrastructure?
In my opinion, these should come from the regulatory bodies. I mean, I can come up with a structure like this, I mean, from a large corporate perspective, but then any other large corporate can come up with a different perspective, right? I mean, and these are not let's say, small pills to swallow, basically. And changing the whole data infrastructure, data regulations, and everything should come from the regulatory bodies, but with a good consultation of the industry as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, we do also see, I guess, startups or younger companies taking a step at it, try to create these data infrastructures. Yeah, and does any of the panelists want to sort of present a view? How could this evolve going forward, right? Because if it's the regulator that's in the best position to own or manage or develop such an infrastructure, then if a startup in that space, who should they engage as the ultimate customer then, right? Those type of infrastructure type of solutions. So if any of the panelists want to sort of give a stab at.
And just a clarifying note on that one. I mean, when I'm talking about this, the regulatory bodies has to come up with some solutions for it. I'm not necessarily referring to building it and owning this, by the way. I mean, it is just creating the blueprint of it. And it boils down to the point of interoperability, basically. We need standardization on how to handle data. Mm-hmm. And if this is going to be there, then I think everyone can develop their own solutions and then their own infrastructure as well. Because I mean, then everything is going to be interoperable and everything is going to be talking to each other in a much easier way.
I'd like to add one thing to the discussion, if I'm allowed.
Yeah, please.
Because I think in order for us from the healthcare system to be adopting more technologies, I would very much encourage that we have a discussion with the healthcare system where they becomes more clear in expressing their needs. Because as soon as we have a technology that overcome a need or helps with the need experienced by clinicians within the healthcare system, there's a much higher chance of the new technology being accepted and included in clinical practice. So I think one of the things is a closer dialogue with the healthcare system, allowing them to express clearly their needs to be helped with.
Great, thanks. And on that note, because I guess we have talked about a lot about data and patient data. Is this going to be the focus of health tech going forward, or do you see there are other realms of, I guess, issues or either opportunities or considerations that for other players in the health tech system or the health tech space that maybe comes from a more traditional medtech space? Where could be the opportunity and the considerations for them going forward? And also with, I think Andreas, you mentioned a lot about the vendor's perspective, and of course, you come from a technology company's perspective. But is there sort of anything you see that's changing on the buyer side, which that's broadly applicable to all vendors going forward?
Outside of the generics on value creation, so I don't see a lot of cross markets. So in our case, we operate across all the way from Australia to the US. And what I see more is a general trend of more and more tech savvy buyers and larger willingness to see and look at bigger bets on technology if there is efficacy on the solution part. What I do believe is maybe even more interesting at a macro level is something we discuss especially a lot with US healthcare vendors, which is the patient-driven purchases. So to a larger and larger extent, healthcare will also be managed by the patient itself. And there will be also, I think, in Europe, an even larger offering of private healthcare solutions that traditionally has been government offered. And that especially creates a vacuum for operators. In the US, it will be health insurance companies and healthcare providers and health plan providers to go in and create markets and sub-markets that we as vendors, MedTech or software tech technologies can go and leverage, because the patients ultimately now are in the driver's seat of what they feel is the right kind of solution for them. And that changes the market dynamics quite a lot, because if we look at healthcare historically, there's been a large scale advantage. Healthcare has been more, let's say, comfortable with buying from traditional blue chip vendors. But all of a sudden, as patients themselves get more and more in the driver's seats of the purchases related to their health or their journey, different types of vendors can tap in.
Corey, is there any perspective you'd like to add here?
It is also looking from the complexity of the healthcare perspective. I mean, any technology company can come up with a technology solution, but I mean, for example, if I'm following the startup terms, like we are always talking about, let's say, the minimum viable product or the minimum viable solution, but when it comes to healthcare, actually, the minimum and the viability are already defined by the regulations, right? I mean, you need to have the FDA approvals or the CE marks, etc. So in that respect, moving forward with new technology innovations should already start with thinking about what is the minimum viable ecosystem for me to put this piece of technology in practice. I mean, for example, do I need to create a hospital partnership? Do I need to get in partnerships or in good agreement with a patient advocacy group? How am I going to introduce or access to formal and informal caregivers of these patients? So these type of things are the elements that we need to consider for building up the minimum viable ecosystem around any early stage technology that we would like to put in.
How does that fit, Corey and Andreas? Because Corey is looking at it from the macro perspective, and Andreas, you're saying that a lot of the not buying power, but decisions are influenced by patients. So is that a good thing or a bad thing that patients have more a say in? Do they only look at themselves, or what do you think?
I think it's really, really positive. And I think one of the things we end up discussing a lot is, of course, data and the macro versus the micro of healthcare, right? So I think, Corey, you made a point of it's not about replacing doctors, it's about augmenting doctors. And you also made another point, which is at the helicopter macro level, we actually lack doctors. So we have a hard time augmenting doctors who aren't there. So I think this is the problem we have on the patient side, is that me as a patient, I want a solution that is mine, that is unique to me as a patient. But I also want the benefits of the macro. There are other patients like me who have got similar treatments, and I want to know what works best for them. So how do we do this kind of a dichotomy? So we buy personally and we gain tendencies globally. And I think that is the exact place where healthcare becomes really interesting, because healthcare is one place where we do not want to discriminate between race or gender or whatever it might be, because we can learn so incredibly much from sharing data more globally. We aren't that different. And I think a lot of what we're doing in the research we're conducting at Coady proves this exact point. We're not that different. That means it is important learning from the macro, but I need to be able as a patient to know, as I think both Corey and Henning has said, when are my data being leveraged? Can I leverage it more? And can I gain more from it at the macro level? And that is something, back to Corey's point about the community. We need to find a better way of operating the community we scale from. And that needs to be more of an opt-in, because I'm sure, as to Henning's point, a lot of us, me included, would love to opt in. I just want to know what I opt into. And that's back to the strength of the patient. We have never been stronger. We have never been more knowledgeable. We've never had more access. So if we keep on building on that, then we just need to organize. And that is where this becomes hard, because I think if you look at this historically, all the way back to French Revolution level, when we really started getting really good in early information age at organizing, we've never really been better at organizing. Look at Facebook, and never been worse. So everybody wants their own Facebook group, their Facebook setup, their own everything, right? Again, dichotomy. And that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges for us as a human race right now. How do we come more together while staying unique?
And there are several components of it. It's already out there, by the way. For example, platforms like Patient Like Me. I mean, they have grown up really, really rapidly, because, I mean, you are, let's say, providing your data, and then it's just create a phenotype of you with similar type of patients, so that then you can see that what has worked for them, and then you can also be empowered actually to have a say in your conversation with your healthcare professional, that, hey, I have seen that these type of patients has got the highest benefit from that type of treatment, and I also want that instead of this. Or at least you force them to explain that why they are making this decision for you. And this is this type of patient empowerment is absolutely a positive thing. Does it create extra burden on the healthcare, which is already overstressed healthcare system? It's of course creating a lot of things, and this is going to be also the catalyzer of the technology adaptation from the healthcare side. Because I mean, at certain moment, healthcare professionals are really, really going to get overwhelmed in providing better and personalized care to their patients, because it is going to require a lot of time and a lot of data, which they don't have.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the great insights.
And I think Andreas, you actually had a good, there's a question right now that points directly to what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I think, Tim, you want to take on that question?
Yeah, it's Alberta who asks, in the GDPR, it is stated that human citizen rights, the researchers must explain algorithmic decisions. Yeah, what is that? And can you, in the products you develop, can you explain what that product actually does in every situation?
Alberta, great question. This is a topic I would wish we'd had the entire hour to discuss, because both from an ethical and technical perspective, I think this is so important. I'll make it very, very short. I use technology every day, like electricity. I cannot explain the full circle of electricity. I can't. I use a computer and a smartphone every day, couldn't live without it. And at the core of a smartphone, we have quantum mechanics. every semiconductor in a modern computer is based on semiconductors and band structure. And I can't explain it. A lot of people can't explain quantum mechanics, but we love using it. The problem is that artificial intelligence is so good at branded that we end up fearing something that we might not actually have to fear. And I think that's the problem of explainability. I can explain at a large scale what our technology does, but at the micro level, the whole point of the technology is to allow it to operate on its own within a mathematical spectrum. And there I cannot describe it, because in some of our models, there's 80 million parameters. So just getting to the bottom of it would take forever. So I think we need to ask ourselves ethically, if we can approximate, if we can sort of know where we end up, and we have a very, very, very decisive description of what we use this kind of technology for. Why do I need to know how my semiconductor in my microchip in my phone works? As long as we know how it roughly or approximately will work. And that, I think, is the goal, describing the user value, the customer value, the risk. And then we need to find the best tool in the tool shed. And if that tool is hard to explain, but we can approximate it well enough, we can document it mathematically, I think we're on sound ground to use it, even though GDPR wants us to explain it to a full extent.
Can I add a comment to that?
Yes, please.
Because I think that one of the things we overlook when we talk about explainability in terms of artificial solutions is that in a lot of situations we have, what we fear with the artificial intelligence is the black box syndrome, so to speak. The thing that the technology takes decisions and we are not aware why they are taking these decisions. But I think the good thing about working with artificial intelligence is actually that we try to understand the important parameters by which the algorithms make the decisions. And when you think about the situation where we have a diagnosis made by a doctor, there's a lot of black box decisions taking place within the head of the medical doctor. And I think actually that the fact that we are now discussing artificial intelligence and the whole explainability is actually opening up a black box, and is reducing the amount of black boxes that are currently in the healthcare system. So I'm not afraid of that. I rather see us using much more of that to reduce the number of human black boxes actually.
That's a pretty good point, Henning. I think it was 2 years ago that I have attended a conference about interventional cardiology, and there was some live theater type of applications. I mean, the different type of from different parts of the world, interventional cardiologists were placing stents or treating different type of heart conditions in the cath lab. And there was a panel discussion, so that the 10 expert interventional cardiologists were watching the treatment being done. So 10 plus 1 operating doctor over there. And then actually you can see in the conversations that there are 11 different type of opinions are there on how to treat that patient. So the human decisions are dynamic, and human decisions are based on the experience, are based on the context at this moment. I mean, at the end, they all provide necessary outcomes, and maybe one of them is providing 95% improvement, the other one is providing 92% improvement, but they all improve the patient condition with all different type of decisions. So, and this is what you have been also telling, Henning, that doctors do have lots of personal touch on the decisions they make, and using different type of technologies that comes from the machine learning and artificial intelligence is also going to help us to bridge this knowledge gap, the skill gap between the really experienced doctors and the inexperienced ones.
Exactly, Corey. Exactly, and that's just the next level of the explanation. So we all want to be met by the very experienced doctor that's seen our case before, and just came out of arrived at job, so it's not tired and all that. But in a lot of cases, we meet a young, unexperienced doctor who haven't seen a case like mine and who has already been at job for 8 or 10 hours. And in those cases, I definitely think that the support by an algorithm, whatever type it is, it makes a huge difference to the quality of the treatment done.
Great, thanks everyone. Just keeping an eye on the time. This has been a great conversation. I think there's lots of insights that's been generated. I don't know if we have maybe just take 1 minute to go around the panel if anyone wants to leave a take-home message for our audience today. I don't know if any of the panelists have a take-home message to share.
I can share one thing. I mean,
Yes,
for
please.
all the young entrepreneurs, I mean, please keep on working what you are working. I mean, your passion is going to make life better for all of us. But what I would like to emphasize is that, I mean, keep always in your mind that you need a minimum viable ecosystem when it comes to implementing your innovation. So keep that in mind. Don't forget the others that are going to support you in implementing this, and then it will be great.
Great, thanks, Corey. Henning?
Yeah, my insight would be that the healthcare system can't do it alone, neither can the people with technical skills. So I think the whole co-lab, co-creation of solutions is very important. And I invite anyone with a good idea or with a good technology to reach out to us at Rigshospitalet, and we can try to match you with the right needs to develop very important solutions for future healthcare.
Great, thanks. Andreas, any last words for the audience?
I think the most important from news or a message from the trenches is that a lot is changing, and for the better. Not that it necessarily was worse before or bad before, but a lot of good tendencies is happening right now, a lot of good trends. And I think it's never been better to build technology for healthcare than it is exactly right now.
Great. Well, on that note, thanks everyone. Thank you again for this great panel discussion. Much appreciated for your time and your insights. And thanks for Tim for pulling this event together with Amy. Thank you so much. And thank you audience for taking the time. Hope you've enjoyed this session, and we'll catch you next time. Bye everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.